Morning.
Morning.
When I was about 11 years old, my parents packed me and my other siblings into our brown minivan to drive to Florida for a vacation. We stopped many places along the way, not necessarily to sightsee, but simply because there were 4 children, 5 to 15 years old, and a mother with a pretty small bladder. One of the last places we stopped on our journey was at a Denny's in Georgia. If you've never been to a Denny's, it's basically a 24-hour diner with mediocre food at best. It was in between lunch and dinner, so the restaurant was nearly empty. My mom greeted the hostess and said, "Table for 6." The woman looked over at us curiously and told us to please wait. She went over to a man behind the counter and said something to him that we couldn't hear from where we were standing. The man came over to us and said, "I'm sorry, but we can't seat you." Again, the restaurant was pretty much empty, aside from a few people. My mom was confused and asked why. The man said they were in the middle of a shift change and didn't have enough wait staff to serve us. My mom told my dad to take us to the car. As we waited for my mom, we saw the other families enter the restaurant and get seated. When my mom returned, she was clearly upset and said, "Let's go." It wasn't until I was much older that my parents explained what happened that day. The manager at Denny's didn't seat us because my brother is black. This is Alex. We took him in when he was 2 weeks old because his parents were unable to take care of him. His biological father was in jail and his mother was in the throes of drug addiction. My parents hoped that by adopting Alex, they could provide him with the opportunity at a life that he may not have had otherwise. Before we adopted him, he remained our foster child for about 1.5 years. During this time, the court allowed his biological mother scheduled visitations to prove whether or not she was fit to take care of Alex herself. She was unable to follow through with the visitations due to her addiction, so Alex remained a part of our family. When he was 18 months old, the adoption agency threatened to take him away from us so that he could be placed with a black family. My parents had to fight for him in court during a time when interracial adoption was not as widely accepted as it is today. The adoption agency felt he should be taken from us after he was a member of our family for almost 2 years because they thought a black child should be with black parents, even if these parents were strangers to Alex. It was a very trying time for my family, but after almost 1 year in court, my parents officially adopted him. Once the adoption was finalized, my parents and Alex were invited to take part in a news broadcast with Matt Lauer, who many of you may not know, to speak about the controversial issue of interracial adoption. They discussed the fact that adoption should have no color boundaries and that all babies really need is love. Alex was barely 2 when my family was first exposed to the subtle racism that exists in our society today. He was riding around the house on his little tricycle. My mom was in the kitchen, I was at the table coloring. I was about 6 or 7 at the time. He somehow opened the door to the basement and the front wheel of his bike slipped onto the first step. As soon as we heard the loud bang, we looked over and saw that the door was open to the basement. Alex's little tricycle was caught on the pole halfway down the cellar stairs, and he was at the bottom of the steps screaming. He fell down the entire flight of stairs. I've never seen so much blood in my life. Luckily, he was so young that he doesn't remember much of it, but my mother does. She remembers how when they arrived to the hospital, the doctors were reluctant to treat Alex until he was tested for AIDS. She remembers that there was a lot of red tape since he was recently adopted, as well as a big runaround about who was going to operate on his broken jaw. My mom vividly recalls the horrible feeling she had when Alex didn't receive the urgent care he needed because he was black. As I was talking to my mom about this over the weekend, she said any white child would have been operated on immediately. We lived in a predominantly white neighborhood, and Alex was one of the only black kids in his school until he went off to college. At the time, I was too young to realize the effect this had on him. I knew people noticed that our family was different. Kids would ask, "Why doesn't your brother look like you?" Or people who didn't know he was my brother would say things like, "Who is that black boy with your family?" As I got older, I learned through his experience about the hatred and ignorance that still exists. When I told Alex I was going to talk about our family story today, he sent me some thoughts. Instead of trying to paraphrase them, I would like to read some of what he wrote. What is worse than racism? In my mind, the only thing worse than racism is people being ignorant to the fact that it still happens. You can't fault people for not understanding the struggles of others. But so many believe that because they weren't raised to be racist, that nobody is. I was born after the Civil Rights Movement in a post-segregation era. Yet in my lifetime, I had firsthand many experiences with racism and injustice. I've been told I am not welcome places. Doctors refuse to operate on me. People cross the street when I walk towards them. I've been pulled over and accused of stealing my own car. Parents told me that I couldn't date their daughters because I am black. Although the pain I felt from these instances remains, I like to see the good in everyone. I thought I should accept everything that happened to me because I was the odd one out. I felt that I shouldn't blame people for acting the only way that they knew how. My perspective was also different because I was raised by a white family in a 98% white town. I saw that it was not simply a white and black thing. It wasn't until recently that I realized the issue is way bigger than that. When I look into current events and see the divide that is being created in America, it scares me. I start to realize it wasn't just my own isolated experiences, but a systematic issue. I'm not writing this to say that everything is wrong about our society or to point fingers at others. What we all need to do is the exact thing you did as a community on Saturday, which is start a conversation. Unless we are willing to talk about these issues, nothing will ever change. Everyone is different, in one way or another. That is what makes this world so wonderful. Remember that no matter your past, no matter what others think, no matter how out of place you may feel, you are in a position to make a positive difference. Despite everything that Alex has been through, and partially because of it, he has connected with like-minded people to pursue his passions. He graduated from college, published a book, played semi-pro football, and he's a hip-hop artist. Much of his music is an expression of his story and the adversity he faced growing up. When he's not writing music or performing at shows, he works for a nonprofit agency that helps young people find their voice. Alex is smart, kind, generous, and pretty hilarious. He has taught me more than I ever thought I could learn from a little brother. It is a unique position to be in. I am, if you didn't already know, a white American female. And rarely am I the direct object of racism. However, to witness what Alex went through was extremely painful. Our relationship wasn't defined by our different skin color, yet the way others treated him sometimes was and is. The connection I have with him makes it extremely difficult for me to fathom how anyone in their right mind could treat someone differently due to their race. Whenever someone I love is hurt, it affects me. I can empathize with them and I want to protect them. When the source of the pain is something that can be avoided, it makes it even harder to accept and move on from. I am more than a bystander of my brother's experience. I'm part of it. And I also want to be part of the solution. Saturday's programming, combined with speaking to my family about Alex's experience, caused me to reflect on issues that sometimes lie dormant in my mind due to my own protected experience. Thanks to my upbringing and values, I am not racist. But is that enough? Does my self-assurance that racism doesn't exist within me really address the problem at all? I'm not sure what the answer to that question is. But I think the tough conversations we had on Saturday are a good start. It is so important for us as individuals and as a community to explore ways that we can be part of the solution, no matter how small. I would love to continue to address and talk about these issues in order to create a space where, at least in our community, people like my brother don't have to be subjected to the subtle and overt displays of racism that are still very much a part of our world today. Here are a few pictures of Alex. That's my brother Kyle on the left, Alex, obviously, in the middle. Gibby, my older sister, and that's me holding a lamb. Today is actually Alex's 29th birthday, and I told him my gift to him was to tell people, everybody here, how wonderful he is. I also sent him an Amazon gift card in case that wasn't enough. This is the day that Alex was officially adopted. That's my sister Gibby. Because it's his birthday, I figured this picture was fitting. There's my family and Mr. Brandon, as you know. Here we are. You could barely see him, but there he is. Alex in the back. This is the day he graduated from college with my mom. This is a book he wrote. It's a compilation of his songs and short stories about his life. And some, short stories. Alex is severely dyslexic, and when he was writing a book, I was like, "You're going to let me edit it, right?" And he was like, "No, I'm not having it edited." I was like, so it's kind of edit-free, which shows more of who he is. This is the album cover, his album, and kind of it's fitting for the different parts of himself that he expresses. There he is rapping. There he is playing football. He's really funny. That's him in his long john. And there we are. So, I'm going to leave you with a poem by Rumi. It is called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Thank you.